She giggled. Not at something I said, God forbid. Not at the waiter, or the violinist brushing through something soft and expensive in the corner. No, she giggled at her phone. At a screen that lit her face in that tacky LED blue, the one that makes people look like ghosts. I was mid-sentence about the villa in Tuscany. Our villa, the one I'd booked for our anniversary, and she didn't even hear it. Her thumb tapped back and forth, that smug little grin tugging at the corner of her mouth like a schoolgirl passing notes. I sipped my wine, watched the rim of her glass still untouched. 21 years. 3 houses. 4 businesses. 2 miscarriages. 1,000 Tuesday dinners and silent Sunday coffees. And that was how I found out. The screen turned slightly. Just enough for the light to catch her wine glass. Just enough for my eyes to land on the message. I'm so far out of his league, it's embarrassing. The contact name, E. Not even a real name. Just an initial. Cowardly. I blinked once. That old voice in the back of my skull, the one that used to scream, stayed silent this time. It just nodded. It had seen enough. I stood slowly. Told her I was going to the restroom. She barely looked up. Mumbled something. Still typing. But here's the thing. I didn't go to the restroom. I walked to the front. Asked the maitre d' to call for my car. And then I came back. She still hadn't touched her wine. I sat. Looked her right in the eyes. Her fingers paused mid-type. She finally noticed me watching. Then your embarrassment is over, I said. She tilted her head like a confused cat. What? I didn't explain. I didn't repeat it. I stood, slid the chair back without scraping it, and left. That was the moment she lost the last thing in this world that could have protected her from what came next. So before I keep going, I'll just say this. If you're hearing this and you're not subscribed yet, do that now. Seriously, over 90% of you listening aren't, and we've got plenty more where this came from. It helps our team keep digging deeper, telling stories like this. Real ones. The ones you never forget. Now back to the restaurant. I could feel her confusion like heat rising behind me as I stepped outside. She was still sitting there with the message thread open. She hadn't even grasped it yet. She thought I was bluffing. Dramatic. Maybe overreacting. She still believed she was the one in control. She had no idea who E worked for, or what a stupid, irreversible mistake she had just made. She had no idea that the same man she was sleeping with owed his entire career, every bonus, every keycard, every elevator button, to someone she once called boring. And she definitely didn't know that I wasn't headed home. Not yet. I had somewhere else to be. There was a number in my phone I hadn't dialed in 18 years. Not since the day I helped a young, nervous analyst lock in a deal no one else would touch. Back when he still had acne and thought a $10 million valuation was steep. I believed in him. I backed him. Now he ran one of the largest private equity firms on the Eastern Seaboard. And tomorrow morning, he was going to learn that the man his rising star, Evan Cross, had decided to seduce a married woman with was the same man who wrote his first check. I didn't need a confrontation. I didn't need a scene. All I needed was 4 words. The game had already started. She just hadn't realized she was a pawn yet. The valet barely shut the car door before I was already backing out. No hesitation. No music. Just the ticking of the turn signal as I glided past polished sidewalks and candlelit windows. Our old world, one she still thought I belonged to. I drove 3 blocks without thinking, then pulled into an underground garage I'd used during my consulting days. Dust on my fingerprints, but the code still worked. That felt like a sign. I sat there in the dark, engine off, cabin quiet, phone glowing in my hand. It had been years since I scrolled that far back in my contacts. Past CEOs who flamed out. Founders who thought they were visionaries until their burn rates lit the fuse. Past the assistant who once tried to blackmail me with emotional labor invoices, whatever the hell that was. And then I saw it. Haro J. No emoji. No title. Just the name. I tapped. 3 rings. Then, this is Joseph. Still had that same uptight crispness. Like every sentence had a golf club shoved up its spine. I didn't waste time. One of your men, Evan Cross, is sleeping with my wife. I thought you'd want to know. Silence. I let it sit. He finally asked, "Who is this?" I stared at the ceiling of the garage. Let the weight settle on the call. Then said, "The man who wrote your seed check. Look up the name on your Series A documents. And remind him who funded your first buyout." Silence again, but not confused this time. Just terrified. And then, the slight tremble in his voice. I understood. I ended the call before he could say anything else. Because he did understand. Joseph Haro had built Haro and McKendall on borrowed trust, mine. I was the quiet name buried deep in his foundational documents. Not a board member. not an investor. Just a man who pulled a few strings back when strings still mattered more than likes. I didn't need a board vote. I didn't need headlines. I just needed him to remember who owned the lock before Evan ever got a key. I sat back and closed my eyes. For a moment, I thought of Evan, not as a threat, but as a symptom. The kind of man who only rises when no one checks the floor beneath him. Loud, ambitious, probably believes wearing a navy suit with sneakers makes him look visionary. One of those LinkedIn clowns who calls every meeting a war room and every client a partner. And she fell for that. Of course she did. He probably made her feel young, told her she was too brilliant to be stuck in a marriage, whispered things like, "You deserve more," while texting 3 other women the same line. It wasn't just the affair. It was the boredom of it. She didn't fall into the arms of a better man. She tripped into the arms of a guy who thinks being loud in meetings is a leadership style. Back in the restaurant, she was probably still sitting there, still thinking I'd come back and apologize for storming off, still believing her leverage came from secrets. But I've been in boardrooms where people lost billions in a single sentence. I know exactly how fast a name can be erased. So I made one more call. My lawyer. Midnight or not, he always picks up. That's why I pay him like I do. I said, pull up our prenup, scan for infidelity clauses, and get a copy of our joint account activity from the last 60 days. He didn't ask why. He already knew. And while she was probably finishing dessert, still smug from that little text she thought I hadn't seen, a storm she couldn't name was already gathering behind the next sunrise. She had no idea how fast everything could vanish. Not yet. At 10:07 p.m., her first text came through. Hey, you okay? Can we talk? She waited exactly 12 minutes before sending the second one. I know you're upset. Can we be adults about this? Then came the call. Straight to voicemail. She tried once more, this time calling through FaceTime, because visual guilt always worked better than text. But I had already powered off the phone linked to her contact. It sat face down in the drawer of a condo she didn't know existed, a place listed under a trust that never had her name on it. She hadn't been curious about the extra line item on our annual taxes. Or maybe she noticed and didn't ask. That was always her style. Act detached, then weaponize ignorance when it suited her. Back at the house, I could picture her walking around like a ghost hunting furniture. Checking the garage, no car. Checking the closet, my overnight bag missing. Maybe she wandered into the kitchen, poured a glass of the red I always reserved for real occasions, then sighed like I had ruined our anniversary. She likely went to bed annoyed. Not broken, not frightened, annoyed. She probably told herself I was being dramatic, that I'd cool off by morning, that I'd come home, apologize, admit I overreacted. After all, it wasn't like I caught her in the act. Just a message, just words, just a joke. That's what she'd say, eventually, that I misunderstood the tone. Meanwhile, I sat in a quiet, sterile condo 3 miles away with dual monitors casting a soft blue light across the hardwood floors. No art on the walls. No personal items. Just a laptop, a printer, and a black notebook I hadn't opened in almost a decade. Inside it, accounts, transfers, passwords, clauses. I'd made my life clean years ago, easy to burn and rebuild if needed. No kids. No shared businesses. No liabilities with names I couldn't erase with a signature. She never asked why I kept everything separate. Just assumed it was a control thing. Told her friends I had mild OCD or trust issues. It wasn't either. It was foresight. By midnight, I had already revoked her access to the high-limit Amex she'd used to buy herself a Cartier bracelet as a self-love gift. The bank account with both our names now required dual authentication. She'd still see the balance, but not be able to touch it. I exported the last 3 months of expenses and flagged every charge with Evan's name or proximity. 2 boutique hotels. 1 steakhouse reservation she claimed was a girls' night. A rideshare from the gym to a condo in a neighborhood she'd once called beneath her. That one made me laugh. I didn't feel rage. Not even hurt, if I'm being honest. I felt motion. Direction. Like a man at the top of a slope finally letting himself lean forward and ski. At 1:04 a.m., my lawyer sent a message. Clause 14 active if hard evidence exists. You're 80% there. We'll need 1 more concrete timestamp. I'll handle the asset walling tomorrow. Perfect. In the fridge behind me, still water, cold brew, protein shakes. In the cabinet, a black folder. Inside, the prenup she'd once signed casually over brunch, flipping pages while the waiter brought mimosas. She didn't even read it. Said, I'm not marrying you for your money. Relax. It was the only honest thing she'd said that year. By the time she rolled over in our guest room, probably muttering to herself about my fragile ego, I'd already changed the gate code to our house. She wouldn't know until she tried to leave the next day and found herself locked out of the car, the finances, the future. She made a choice. So did I. Only difference is, I brought receipts. Monday morning, 6:42 a.m. I didn't sleep. Not out of anguish or heartbreak. Those emotions had been processed long ago, probably somewhere around year 16 of pretending to care about her work gossip and gut feelings about her therapist. No, this wasn't insomnia. This was engineering. The espresso machine clicked on automatically. I watched the crema rise. The world outside the condo windows was still gray, like the city wasn't sure if it wanted to wake up yet. But I was already 10 steps into a plan I never thought I'd have to use. At 7 a.m. sharp, I called Martin, my lawyer. Retainer since '09. Old school. Wore a three-piece suit to Zoom calls and said things like due diligence with the same tone most people reserve for a murder weapon. He picked up immediately. Morning. You're early. I have a situation. Infidelity. Confirmed. He didn't ask how I knew. He knew me well enough to assume I don't traffic in hunches. I'll need access to her recent activity. Start with the Amex, Chase household card, phone records. Anything that's not airtight. I want patterns, not anecdotes. He grunted. I'll file the subpoena proxies and privacy waivers. Should have most of it by end of day. Anything urgent? Yeah. Pull our prenup. I need a PDF with Clause 14 highlighted in red. That got a pause. Clause 14. Yes. The one that voids spousal asset rights in the event of extramarital activity. I remember the wording. Extramarital conduct resulting in a breach of marital exclusivity constitutes grounds for financial forfeiture of jointly held assets unless legally challenged within 30 days. Martin let out a low whistle. Most people skip over that clause. She didn't contest it. She was busy Instagramming her eggs Benedict. Understood. I'll move. I ended the call. No small talk. By noon, I had everything I needed. 2 hotel bookings on the household card, both under her name, but the additional guest field on the receipts listed Evan Cross. One on a Thursday afternoon, another on a Sunday morning. Cute. They thought they were being clever by skipping weekends. That somehow weekday affairs were more discreet, less predictable, but they left a trail in loyalty points, Uber drop-offs, and room service orders. One charge, $92 for 2 ribeyes and a bottle of wine. At 2:17 p.m. on a workday, she had told me she was at a client strategy workshop. She even posted a blurry photo of a whiteboard. Had me comment on it. Proud of you. Crush it. I almost pitted how lazy it all was. I compiled everything into a folder, labeled it Asset Lock Prep. Inside, PDFs, screenshots, timestamps, and a photo of Evan from LinkedIn, smirking like a man who'd never had to calculate risk because someone else always covered the fallout. That smirk would cost him his career. That evening, just after sunset, I logged into our joint banking dashboard, transferred 78% of liquid funds into a new account held under the Fenton Revocable Trust. Legal, traceable, bulletproof. The remainder stayed put. Enough to avoid suspicion. Enough to lull her into thinking nothing had changed. She still had access to the old card. She'd be able to buy groceries, maybe a new blouse to wear the next time she played executive's wife. But by the time she'd figure out what was happening, the tide would already be too high. She'd never even see the wave coming. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and stared at the folder on my desk. It didn't scream. It didn't cry. It didn't need to shout. Look what she did to me. It just existed. And that was enough. Facts don't beg for sympathy. They just wait to be weaponized. Tuesday, just after lunch. The kind of afternoon where the sky looks like wet concrete and the whole city feels hungover. I drove across town in silence. No music, just the sound of tires chewing through puddles and a single plan replaying in my head like a mantra. I pulled into a private lot behind a nondescript brick building. Old law offices. The kind that smells like carpet glue and powdered coffee creamer. 3rd floor. No elevator. Just like I remembered. I hadn't seen him in 5 years. Miles Kerrigan, retired state judge, now a strategic advisor for several boards, including Harrow and McKendall's. But more importantly, my old poker buddy. The only man I trusted to act as a scalpel in a world of axes. He looked older, but not softer. Same pressed navy shirt. Same gold Mont Blanc clipped to his pocket. He still ordered 2 espressos before I sat down. He didn't waste time asking why I'd reached out. Just said, "You've got that look. Like something's already dead and you're just dragging it to the autopsy." I didn't laugh. I need Harrow's attention. Quietly, he raised an eyebrow. Joseph? I nodded. You know I can't strong-arm him. He's not the kid in your back seat anymore. I don't need you to strong-arm him, I said. I need you to make sure he listens. He tapped the table. He'll want proof, not whispers. Joseph doesn't act unless the target's already bled out on his conference table. I reached into my leather folio, pulled out a file. Black. No logo. No initials. Just wait. Inside, printed stills from hotel lobby footage, frames pulled from a security system I paid good money to access. Evan Cross, my wife, holding hands, her laughing, him glancing around like a man who's never had to cover his tracks because he's never been caught before. Date and time stamped. The hotel's logo glowing in the corner like a corporate watermark on shame. I slid the photos across the table. Miles picked them up, exhaled slowly. Not a gasp, he wasn't that type. Just a long, quiet release like someone who already knew the rules had been broken and was now calculating the cleanup. She really did it, he murmured. With him. Twice, that I can confirm. He nodded once. Then again, slower. Folded the photos back into the folder like they might catch fire if exposed too long. I'll set a meeting. Joseph will want to hear it from you directly. But don't expect fireworks. I leaned back. Oh, I'm not looking for fireworks. He looked up, skeptical. You're not. I smiled. No, I'm looking for closure. Permanent, precise, and executed by someone who won't flinch. He stared at me for a beat, then said, You always did play long game better than the rest of us. This isn't a game, Miles. It's a correction. He tapped the edge of the folder. Just don't expect public fallout. Joseph's allergic to scandal. I stood, gathered my coat, buttoned it slowly. I don't need public. I need final. That made him pause. He looked at me, not as a friend this time, but like a man recognizing a familiar face on the other side of the battlefield. He didn't speak again, just nodded once, then reached for the check. As I walked out into the drizzle, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt surgical. That folder was now a scalpel, and I had just handed it to a man who knew exactly where to cut. Let Evan keep his delusions of charm and promotion. Let my wife keep believing she had traded up. Let them keep pretending the game was still theirs. Because the next move wouldn't come from anger. It would come from leverage. The kind that arrives wearing a suit and leaves behind silence. Tuesday morning opened with that soft kind of tension, the kind you can't quite name but feel in your teeth. Evan Cross strode into the building like he owned a piece of it, the way mid-level egomaniacs do after they've slept with the boss's niece or pulled off a half-decent acquisition. His hair was perfect. Tie, slightly loosened. Leather messenger bag slung like a war trophy over his shoulder. Probably still replaying whatever weak joke he cracked during pillow talk with my wife. Elevator to the 21st floor, dev strategy, and private client onboarding. His new territory. Keycard, red light. He tried again. Looked at the scanner like it had made the mistake. Tried the door next to it. Read again. He gave a little awkward chuckle, glanced around like a guy on a prank show. No camera. No punchline. Just the receptionist watching him through the glass, frozen like she wanted to be anywhere else. Hey, he said, knocking once. Something's up with my badge. She didn't even move. Just looked at her monitor and pretended he wasn't standing there. That's the moment he started to feel it. Not fear, yet. Just static in the air. Like thunder too far off to hear, but close enough to smell. He backed away, hit the elevator again, went up one more floor where his access still worked, for now. Took a deep breath in the bathroom. Checked his phone like it would reassure him that life was still spinning in his direction. And that's when it came in, a calendar invite. Executive review, founder's office. 3 p.m., mandatory. No notes. No prep doc. No context. Just a time, a room, and a name, Joseph Harrow. The kind of meeting where people come out with a box. Or don't come out at all. Across town, my wife was putting chicken in the oven like nothing happened. She was still operating from the assumption that silence meant surrender. That she'd given me space. And eventually I'd shuffle back into the kitchen, ask what's for dinner, and maybe sigh about needing to work on communication. She made dinner with that passive-aggressive flair, the clattering of pans louder than necessary, utensils thrown just a little too hard into the sink. A silent tantrum in cutlery. At 6:11 p.m., she texted, Can we talk? I'm making your favorite. No apology. No ownership. Just that saccharine implication that food equals forgiveness. That a few roasted vegetables and an expensive bottle of cab could reverse engineer dignity. I waited until 6:28 p.m. Then I replied, Let your new league cover the mortgage. That was it. Not a word more. Because I knew what she'd do next. She'd pace. Call one of her friends. The ones who live in group chats and drink brunch. She'd ask if I was bluffing, if they thought I might cool off. She'd check the bank app, maybe, see the number hadn't changed much, not realizing yet that her name no longer holds the keys. But Evan was now looking at the floor numbers in the elevator like they were a countdown. He still thought it was salvageable. He still thought this was just a weird Tuesday. But 3 p.m. was coming, and when that door opened, he'd find something far colder than an angry husband. He'd find a founder holding a folder. And silence. At exactly 2:57 p.m., Evan Cross adjusted his cuffs outside the double-glass doors of the 26th floor executive suite. He checked his breath in his palm, smoothed his tie. He still thought this was salvageable, maybe a client misstep, a policy misalignment, or some internal audit. He believed in conversations, in second chances, in charisma as an exit strategy. He did not believe in inevitability. The receptionist gave him a strained smile and gestured toward the open door. She didn't speak. Inside, founder Joseph Harrow sat alone at the table. No assistants, no lawyers, just a single manila folder in front of him, closed except for the photo sitting on top. Evan walked in, froze mid-stride. There it was. Dated, time-stamped, high resolution. Him, my wife, her hand in his. Lobby of the Wentworth, the hotel where she once told me she was attending a branding seminar. Joseph didn't say a word for a full 10 seconds. Then, calmly, he asked, "Did you know who she was?" Evan blinked, hands twitching. "She told me. She said they were separated. She said it was over, that he was cold, that they hadn't, for months." Joseph's face didn't move. His fingers hovered over the folder like he was deciding whether to read a verdict or set fire to the whole building. Then, slowly, he picked up his phone, dialed, waited. When I picked up, he didn't say anything, just handed the phone to Evan. "Take it." Evan took the phone like it was a live grenade. Hello." I spoke for words. "Look out your window." Confused, he stepped toward the massive glass wall that overlooked the plaza below. I watched it all from across the street. His posture changed the second he saw her. My wife, hair pulled back, sunglasses off, red around the eyes, holding a black folder in both hands like she was delivering a package she didn't want to open. She stepped out of the black car I had sent, the one with the tinted windows and no plate on the front. She looked up toward the building like she could already feel the shame pressing down from 40 stories. Evan's hand dropped from the glass. His mouth moved, but no words came out. I stayed quiet on the line. Let it breathe. Joseph took the phone back, pressed end. "You've embarrassed this firm," he said without looking up. "You compromised our client trust protocol, blurred personal and professional boundaries, and involved yourself in a situation with consequences." "But I didn't know." "Doesn't matter. I swear to you, Joseph, if I had known." Joseph stood, gently, like gravity didn't apply to him anymore. "That's the problem, Evan. You don't know who's in the room with you." He pointed at the folder. "Until someone opens that." Evan stood there, frozen, watching his entire illusion calcify into something he couldn't charm his way out of. The air in the room had shifted. He was no longer an executive on the rise. He was the object lesson, the parable they'd tell new hires in whispered tones. He looked again at the window, like she might vanish if he stared hard enough. But she didn't. She just waited, holding the folder, tears streaking her makeup, wearing the face of a woman who finally realized the net beneath her had been quietly cut. Joseph Harrow ended the call with the same finality he might use to sign off on a $40 million asset freeze. His thumb hovered over the screen for a second longer, as if making sure the line was dead. Then, without even looking at Evan, he said the words like he was reading them from a marble plaque carved long before either of them were born. "You're done here." Effective immediately, Evan's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Not at first. Joseph continued, flat and clinical. "Your keycards are revoked. You'll be removed from the Slack environment and client systems by 5 p.m. HR will send your severance packet. Standard NDA applies. You'll have 48 hours to clear out your desk." Evan blinked like he didn't understand the language. "Joseph, wait. Please, just let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. I swear to God I didn't know who she was. She said she was getting divorced. She said it was mutual." Joseph finally looked up. Not angry, not even disappointed. Just resolute. "You should have known who I answered to." The line landed like a detonation. Evan took a half step back, as if the floor had just shifted under him. His face drained. Not from the job. He could get another title somewhere, eventually, but from realizing that his mistake had unzipped something much deeper. Something legacy-bound. Something no apology would reseal. Joseph didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. That's what real power looks like. Still water that drowns you faster than a wave. Security stepped in. Two men in gray suits. No badges. No urgency. Just a silent, practiced motion. One moved behind Evan. The other waited for him to take the cue. He didn't. Please, Evan whispered. Joseph, don't do this. I worked for this. I bled for this. Joseph tilted his head, just slightly. So did he. And that was the last word. No further debate. The folder stayed on the table as Evan was escorted out, his steps unsure, his breath shallow. He didn't yell. Didn't fight. That would have been too much dignity. Instead, he crumpled inward like a man watching the story he wrote for himself being redlined in real time. As he passed the hallway of glass offices, no one looked up. Partners kept typing. Analysts pretended to scroll. Associates suddenly found immense fascination in spreadsheets that had sat untouched all morning. Because they knew. They'd all heard the same story over drinks, in whispers, in boardroom jokes told just a notch too loud. There was a man behind Joseph Harrow. The man who bankrolled the first buyout. The man whose name no one dared speak without lowering their voice. The one with the quiet house, the sharp mind, and the last call. They all knew who had made the phone ring. And more importantly, they knew what it meant when it stopped ringing. As the elevator doors slid shut, Evan turned once, maybe hoping for a reprieve, a reversal, a voice calling him back to say it was all a test. But all he saw was reflection. Of himself. Alone. The man who thought he was moving up and had just vanished through the floor. And Joseph? Joseph sat back down, folded his hands, and finally allowed himself a single, imperceptible sigh. Payment rendered. Debt recalled. No receipt necessary. That evening, just after 7, she pulled into the driveway a little too fast, like urgency could undo consequence. The tires crunched across gravel she'd never noticed before, the kind that had been there 10 years and suddenly felt foreign under her wheels. Her lipstick was smudged, hair unbrushed. She'd clearly been crying but hadn't bothered to clean it up. It wasn't vanity anymore. It was hope. Desperate, feral hope. The front door was locked. Not unusual, except it never used to be at this hour. She rang the bell. No answer. She tried again, then walked around to the side gate. It wasn't latched. That was intentional. He was in the garden, gloves on, clippers in hand, trimming the edge of the rose bushes by the side wall like nothing in the world was out of place. Like Tuesday evenings had always been reserved for pruning dead weight. She stood there, arms wrapped around herself like a child waiting for discipline. I didn't mean it, she said, her voice soft and shaky. It was stupid. A mistake. He didn't stop working. She took a step closer. Please, just talk to me. He finally looked up, his face unreadable. Calm. Clear. I've already talked to everyone who mattered today. She winced. I was confused. You were always so distant lately. Always working, always quiet. He raised a brow. So your response to my silence was infidelity? No. No. He told me you didn't care anymore. That we were growing apart. That you were always in your head. I was, he said, pulling off the gloves. But I never once left the house to prove it. She bit her lip. There's nothing left, is there? He looked past her. Not at her. Through her. As if she were already fading. Not for you, he said simply. But for me, this is the beginning. She blinked. You don't even want to yell at me? I don't yell at liars, he said, walking toward the back door. I let them talk themselves out of the room. She reached for him then. Reflex. A hand brushing his sleeve like a memory she was trying to anchor to the present. I didn't think you'd really leave me. He turned, not angry, not smug, just finished. You left first. She stood there, tears returning now in earnest, eyes searching for any trace of the man she'd once known. The man who'd made her feel safe, rich, untouchable. He opened the door, stepped inside, paused once more. There's an envelope on the counter. It has the number for your lawyer, and a copy of the clause you forgot existed. He closed the door gently. A deliberate click. She stood outside for a full minute. 2. The wind moved through the hedges. The porch light flicked on. She looked at her reflection in the glass. Mascara smudged, lips parted, eyes hollow. The house no longer belonged to her. The man inside it? Even less. At 6:03 a.m., Evan's phone rang. He was already awake. He hadn't really slept. Not since yesterday's meeting. Not since the elevator ride where no one made eye contact. Not since he saw the folder, the photos, the look on Joseph Harrow's face. He thought, maybe, there was still a way back. People rebound from worse, don't they? CEOs get caught with offshore accounts. CFOs misreport earnings. PR teams work magic. Spin it right, show remorse, issue a polished LinkedIn essay about growth through adversity. It happens every quarter. But the voice on the line made it clear this wasn't one of those stories. Effective immediately, the voice said, cool and precise. All references to you have been scrubbed from our site, materials, and legal documents. You are not to contact clients, staff, or investors under any circumstance. Legal is already briefed and on standby. Evan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He thought of saying, can we talk? He thought of apologizing again. He thought of bargaining. But none of those tools worked in this world anymore. Not after you've been erased by someone you didn't even see coming. The call ended without a goodbye. Just click. On the other side of the city, I sat on the balcony of the condo. Coffee in hand. No milk. No sugar. I watched the sun rise behind the skyline, turning every sheet of glass gold and orange. The world looked cleaner this way. Honest. Like it remembered what mattered. My phone buzzed once. A message from Joseph. It's done. As promised. I stared at it for a moment. Not to savor it, just to mark it. Like the final period at the end of a contract. I typed back 2 words. Understood. Then I deleted the thread. Entirely. Not archived. Not starred. Not saved for the scrapbook of revenge fantasies. Just gone. No fanfare. No champagne. No victory lap. Because this wasn't about punishment. It wasn't about watching them beg or dragging them through dirt. This was about silence. The kind that never gets reported. The kind that doesn't trend. The kind that just happens. He was gone. She was alone. And me? I was finally still. I sipped the last of my coffee. The city stirred to life around me. Sirens, alarms, subway rumble. All of it continuing, indifferent. I wasn't smiling. I didn't need to. Closure doesn't wear a grin. It just leaves a silence heavy enough that no one dares break it. And that was enough.